Hi everyone, here's a look at Suzuka in the Pro Mazda. Probably the best track for this car, so this should be a good week of racing. My best round here was a 54.3 and I was finding close to it pretty consistently, but setup does make a big difference around here. Fine tuning the balance in small margins can help you find the last couple of tenths. Now it's important to get a good exit out of that final chicane. I got a little bit too much wheel spin, which will compromise me down this main straight, but the lap time was still quite good. Now into turn one, you want to turn into the initial apex, but I don't feel the need to get close and up over this inside curb here. I notice a lot of the F1 drivers, when they come into one, they'll throw the car at the inside curb and let it shoot out. But I just find with the Pro Mazda, if you're too close to that inside curbing, it's a bit hard to get the proper angle over to the second apex. So I'll just not quite completely touch it, sort of brake the car in a straight line towards the outside curb, and then cut across over the inside curb. Now it's important to really open this corner up. So when you're going in, out wide, and then you can take a late apex into here. You don't want to get in the throttle too early, or else it will push the car out and up over that inside curb. Now, how you go about taking this next corner depends on your style. I sometimes leave it in fourth, and I sometimes switch up to fifth. It kind of just depends how good of an exit you get. You don't want to be bouncing in the limiter too long, but on the flip side, the car doesn't always need fifth because it can unsettle it when you downshift. So you've just got to feel how it works for you. Sometimes fourth through all this section is fine. So you're throwing the car quite aggressively up on this left-hand curb and cutting back to the right and up over the curb. The left apex. Now through here, you don't want to push the car out too wide. Now through those last few sections, you've really got to feel the car on the absolute limit of the front end, and you're sort of tempted to do the same here. But if you throw it in understeers, you're offline through that next left-hander, and that will cost you a little lap time. So you make sure you have to get the car pretty much up on this inside curb here. Don't let it be sitting around the middle of the track. Now you've opened up the apex for this next left-hander, you can take a more middle of the track line and turn into that inside corner. Now you want to hug fairly tight left if at all possible. You can let the car run out and exit, but you've got to bring it straight back to the left. When you let it run around that outside line, you're just adding track distance, and that doesn't work through here. So here's this whole first sector. Sometimes when you throw the car too aggressively on this inside curb, it will really lose control, so you don't want to bang it too bad. You've really got to push through here. Like, it looks like it's fairly smooth flowing, and I think some people get into the rhythm of just taking it a bit easy through there, but you've really got to keep the car on the front end to the point that it's basically understeering. Now through here I am shifting up into sixth. I'm down one gear at the 50 meter marker. So I'll be braking, just as you get to the 50 meter marker, and you want to get it close to this inside curb. You don't want to run too wide of it. You also don't want to hit it, so you just aim for that white line next to it. And the same through here. You really want to open this corner up, because if the car goes out there and starts bouncing over that curb, it can get an off track or it can lose a lot of time. So you want to take a fairly tight inside apex here, get up on the curb if you have to keep it straight, and then just power out. But don't go too far out on that outside curving. Now you're keeping fairly tight to this inside curb on entry, and I'm braking after this light pole. Brake hard and kind of get the car fairly stopped, and I like to bring it in fairly close to that inside curb. Again, I've noticed in real life a lot of the F1 drivers lately going fairly deep into the corner, not bothering about the inside apex and running out wide, but in this car I find that you're better off to take the shorter line to the track and get it into that curb and then throttle on and get out. You don't want to get in the gas too early though, because it will push it out in that outside curb, and if you have to come off and come back on the throttle, then you lose drive down this back straight. Now just flat through here, of course, and holding it fairly tight. It feels like a high downforce track, Suzuka, and it is to a certain extent, but there's a lot of fairly long straights between the corners in this car that don't require any lift, so you do want to trim the downforce off quite a lot. It's not as high downforce as you'd think. So you're coming up here, I'm kind of using this road as my braking marker, although I'm braking a fair bit after it. Now into the brakes. Now, there's two approaches in the spoon. You can go down 2 on entry, 2 gears on entry, or you can go down 1 gear on entry and then 1 gear in the middle. It sort of depends on you. The gearbox in this car naturally unsettles it on downshift, so I prefer just to space out the downshifting, although it does mean you have to worry about getting that second gear down the middle of the apex, but I just find it keeps the car a bit more stable to do it that way. So you're down 1 gear, into the inside curb, you want to carry a lot of apex speed in a spoon. It's deceptive, you've got to build up to it. But then at this midpoint, you've got to get on the brakes again and sort of get the car, and that's when I go down into 4th. So when you're on the brakes in the middle of the corner on the outside of the apex, you go down to 4th, and you've got to make sure you get the inside apex here. It's very tempting to throw too much speed into the corner and then continue to carry on past the apex and catch the outside curb. Again, sure way to lose a lot of time. So you want to bring it back into the inside of the corner. I didn't quite hit the inside apex, but I got close enough to it that it didn't cost me. And then I can get back on the throttle and push the car out to use all the track. A corner complex that comes to you with a lot of practice. Now to straighten on this back straight. No lifting, keep the inside line if possible to reduce track length. Now you're braking a fair way after the 100 meter marker. I'd say around the 50 point, but there's no 50 meter marker, so you just got to kind of judge it. So you get hard in the brakes, nearly full braking. Now what you want to do is you want to brake hard, but then you've kind of got to let the car come off the brakes and carry that momentum over the inside curb. So get off the brakes fairly quickly and carry it. Now there's two approaches to this. I've seen that some drivers brake later so they can have more time at full speed and then sort of don't go up over this inside curb and kind of get the front wheel about on that white line to so because they're later on the brakes, but I've never found that work. So I find to open up this final chicane you need to carry the momentum over both corners, but some drivers can make it work for them. So I'll bounce it up over that, then just turn my attention to getting back up on this left hand curb and do the same, and don't get in the throttle too early because you want a good exit and it will unsettle the car over that curb. Then just a tight run line down to the finish line. So 154.327, which I felt was a pretty solid representation of a good lap around here. This is quite a hard track to string all the sectors together because you really do have to push the car in a way that you don't have to at a lot of tracks because there's constant changing of direction and the corners are all quite close to one another, so you really have to drive it on the limit. It's a fun track to extract the maximum out of.
Bye.